The Hitchhiker. I ran to my dorm room after my final class ended. I opened the door, collected my bags, said goodbye to my roommate, and walked to my car. It was winter break, and all I could think of was getting the hell out of here and going home to my family. I had no time to waste. I had to drive cross country, and if I wanted to make it home on time, I needed to leave right away. By midnight, I was driving through the Arizona desert. My eyelids were getting heavy. Cigarettes and coffee were my friends, but I couldn't stop. I was almost at the state line. Home was nearly there. As I turned the corner, my headlight caught the silhouette of what looked like a female hitchhiker. I drove past her, but almost immediately put on the brakes. I know. I should never pick up hitchhikers, but it was pitch black out there, and it had started to rain. I backed up my car, reached over and opened the passenger side door. A dark-haired, what looked to be 5'2", beautiful young woman bent down and asked if she could get a ride to Las Vegas. I said of course, since I was heading the same way. She put her bag in the back seat, closed the door, and sat up front. She thanked me profusely. I said it was no problem. I could see that she was shivering from the rain, so I turned on the heater, reached in the back seat, and handed her my sweater. I asked her what she was doing out there all alone. She replied that she was on her way home from college for winter break. I told her I was doing the same, which broke the ice, and we began to get to know each other. As she was speaking, though, I gave her a once-over, and noticed she seemed out of place. I don't know how to explain it. Her clothes, her mannerisms, hell, even how she spoke, seemed like it was from a different era. I didn't think too hard on it, though. She seemed like a sweet girl, and I was enjoying her company. After only a few miles, we were already becoming fast friends. It's strange, but there was just something about this girl. We even talked about hanging out during our time off, before heading back to school. I even told her I would drive her back to her school on my way back to mine when our break was over. After about an hour, I noticed I was getting low on gas. Thankfully, we were now at the state line, and there was a gas station right before we crossed over into Nevada. I got out and went to pay for the gas, and asked her if she would start pumping. As I got to the door, I turned back and saw her put the hose in the gas tank. I turned around, opened the door, and told the cashier 20 on 5, please. My friend is already pumping it. The cashier looked at me with a smirk on his face and said there's no gas being pumped on 5, looking at me like I was nuts. I handed him the 20 and said, "What are you talking about?" Turned and pointed towards the car and said, "My friend, she's right there." Nobody was there. I ran out of the station towards the car, but there was no sign of her. She was gone, even her bag. A voice behind me said, "You met Mary, mister." I turned around. It was the cashier. I asked him what he was talking about. He proceeded to ask me if I had just picked her up hitchhiking. I said yes. When he asked me if she wore clothes that seemed from a different era, and spoke like she was from a different era as well, I said yes, that's exactly her. But how did you know that? That's Mary, he said. Everyone knows her around here. She's haunted this stretch of highway for decades now, and always this same time of year. Mary was killed in 1955. Her body was found about an hour back from where you came, lying on the side of the road with her throat cut. She was on her way back home to Vegas from college for winter break. Wait a minute. You're telling me I gave a ride to a hitchhiking ghost? I said sarcastically. You sure did, and you're not the first guy to do it, you know, the cashier said. My God, I thought to myself. I just couldn't believe what I was hearing. I walked towards my car and looked inside the passenger door window to see if there was any trace of her. The only thing that was there was my sweater, lying on the passenger seat, and it was soaking wet. Ghost stories. Another mundane shift at work. To be expected. After all, what fun's to be had when everything's dead and all I do is tend the grounds? I never learned his name, the other one. Something about him. Maybe it was his low voice, quiet as a whisper. Uncanny in his demeanor, too. A tall, wiry, crane-neck man, constantly with a toothy grin on his face. It never occurred to talk to him. He went about his tasks, as did I. That's why, as I was finishing up, and as the fog rolled in, on that one cool autumn evening, I was all the more surprised when he spoke to me. "All right, partner?" The man approached with a jolly tone and a grin on his face. "Just finishing up, are you?" "Yeah," I replied hesitantly. I must just be paranoid. I always thought he was creepy, but I've never even spoke to him. "Cool. I'll be seeing you tomorrow then." He mutters as he walks off. He falters, turns around and asks, "Say, why did you start working at this graveyard anyway? You're a young lad. It doesn't get much more boring than this." I felt stupid for being so nervous to talk to him. We'd been working with each other for weeks. "Yeah, it's boring, but I like the peace," I replied. "Won't get much peace round here. It's a haunted graveyard." He joked, and for a moment I felt at ease. The cool autumn air with the fog rolling in, laughing easily with a guy who used to put me on edge for no reason. I stood up and shook his hand. "Michael, pleasure to meet you." "Nice to meet you, Michael." He smiled. "Say, you want to hear a ghost story?" I chuckled. I don't believe in ghost stories. "Don't you?" I turned around to pick up my gloves, and when I looked back, all that remained was an empty graveyard filled with fog. Mom's brooch. When you lose something precious, your mind starts playing tricks on you. You keep seeing it here and there. It must be in that drawer. "It's not there, Katie," moaned Mom. "I can't believe you actually lost the brooch your dad gave me as an engagement gift, though I feel I knew you would." Katie looked despairingly at Mom. "But you wanted me to wear it. It was literally one of your last words." "I thought you would show more consideration after I died. I was such a fool." It was a gorgeous brooch, no denying, and Katie could understand why Mom was so upset. A spray of flowers and matte rough 22-karat gold, unobtainable nowadays, each flower decorated with a turquoise. Her father had picked it up in his travels in the Middle East, his first gift to Mom. One of the turquoises had fallen out over the years, and Katie always felt so happy she hadn't lost it. Not that she had ever worn it while Mom was alive, but on her deathbed, Mom had encouraged Katie to wear her baubles. "Let them see the light of day, Katie," she had whispered. And after her death, after she reappeared by Katie's side, she kept nagging her. "Why don't you wear the brooch today? You have that work thing, don't you? And for God's sake, put on some lipstick. Are you the ghost here?" Katie hadn't laughed. She put on the brooch and the lipstick. Later, she lost the brooch. They had looked and looked, increasingly frantically, but there was no sign of it. And Mom kept fretting about it night and day. When Katie woke up and when she fell asleep, Mom would be there, whispering and muttering about her priceless brooch that Katie lost. The morning wind was chilly, and Katie dug her hands deep into her pockets. Mom was standing next to her, as always, her voice cutting through the cry of the seagulls and the roar of the waves below. "You're doing the right thing, Katie. I couldn't live with myself either if I lost an irreplaceable object. And let's be honest, it's not as if your death will make a difference to anyone. You might as well join me. Maybe finally I can get some peace. God knows you didn't give me much peace while I was alive, or dead for that matter." Katie looked around for a split second. She thought she saw the brooch lying on the rocks on the ground. Mom followed her look. "Katie, such a fool. That brooch is gone for good. The most precious thing I ever owned, thanks to you." Katie looked at the ocean. Would she stop hearing Mom if she jumped? There was only one way to find out. As her body fell freely towards the waves, something dropped from her pocket, sparkling in the morning sun, landing on the rocks. One more of the turquoises fell out, but otherwise, the brooch was intact. The green fog. Two men were walking on a Massachusetts beach one autumn day. They had just finished a long day of fishing and were heading home. On their way back, dark clouds started to roll in. Then a flash of lightning crashed across the sky, and a hard rain started to pour. The men started to run. Since they were nowhere near home, they decided to take shelter in an old abandoned beach house they came across. The men got the door open and went inside. The storm was growing very violent now. It was so dark, and all that could be heard was the hollow wind blowing all around them. The men were shivering, chilled to the bone. They walked over to the fireplace and struck up a fire. "That's much better," one of the men said. The other agreed. They put their things down on the ground and sat in front of the fireplace to wait out the storm. There wasn't much left of the place. A couple of pieces of covered furniture. That's about it. Nobody had been here in years. It was eerily quiet. So one of the men brought out a radio and said, "Let's turn on the game. That'll give us something to do while we wait." The other agreed. They were about 30 minutes into the game when one of the men got up to look out of the window to see if the storm had improved. It hadn't. But as he looked down, he could see a strange green fog approach the house from the beach. He stepped back from the window and sat back down by the fire. He thought it looked strange, but didn't tell his friend. It was just fog, after all, he thought. Just then a loud crack of lightning flashed across the house, emanating a green hue from the fog. A strong gust of wind blew down the fireplace and snuffed out the fire. The men both had a shiver run down their spines. The radio started to crackle in and out. The sounds of the ball game were fading in and out, with the voice of a woman saying, "Can you help me? Please help me. Can you help me, please?" Just then another loud crash of lightning filled the air, and a woman's voice screamed out in pain from upstairs. The two men looked at each other, trembling in fear. They heard what sounded like a woman being stabbed to death on the radio. Then one of the men felt something drip on his cheek. He looked up, and it was a pool of blood seeping from the floorboards. "Holy shit! What the hell is going on here?" one of the men said. Before his friend could reply, a door violently swung open and crashed against a wall upstairs. The two men got up and stood at the bottom of the stairs to see what was up there. They heard heavy boots walking across the upstairs hall. Then a loud thud hit the ground. and then a wet, dragging sound followed behind it. One of the men shouted, "Who's up there? Leave us alone. We have a gun. We'll shoot you." The other man whispered, "Why did you say that? We don't have a gun." "I know that, but he doesn't." It was silent now, both men still looking upstairs, when the radio in the living room started to crackle. It was the woman. "Why didn't you help me? Why wouldn't you help me?" Then from upstairs, they heard a man's soft, maniacal laugh, and boots walking down the stairs, dragging what sounded like a body behind him. But nothing was there. No man, nothing. The sounds were getting closer. It was almost on top of them now. One of the men saw a trail of blood coming down each step as a thud hit each floorboard. The footsteps reached the bottom of the stairs. The two men looked at each other, trembling. Then looking back in front of them, when they heard a low, evil growl, the two men screamed in fright, turned, and ran out the front door, into the storm, never to return again. Ghost Tour. Archer said it was going to be fun. That's why I agreed to go. He said it would be harmless fun, and I thought that was just what I needed in my life. The Mill Street Bank was abandoned back in the 1980s. Apparently, it shut down after a robbery had gone especially wrong and gotten bloody, leaving 17 people, including the robbers, dead. I had no doubt about whether or not the story was true. I'd heard all about it before, but what I did have doubts about were the ghosts. The bank had become a pretty popular destination for ghost tours over the past few years. Archer's friend Malcolm had been to one, but I guess the basic tour wasn't enough for him. He wanted to see more. Neither he nor Archer were any strangers to urban exploration, and every time one of them found a fresh ruin to explore, they just had to drag the other to go and check it out. Can't say I was ever thrilled about that. Urban exploration isn't really my thing. It just seems way too dangerous to me. But Archer kept pressuring me to go with him, and I just had to say yes. So instead of having a romantic Sunday evening with my boyfriend, I got to follow him to a run-down old bank to poke around. I guess it was kind of cute, seeing how excited he got over everything. He and Malcolm were taking pictures and grinning from ear to ear, like a couple of little kids on Christmas. And I'd be lying if I said I wasn't getting into it. A little bit, too. When they found the old bank vault, they exactly didn't need to drag me inside kicking and screaming. I walked in right alongside them, wanting to see it for myself. I figured it would be safe. Instead, I got to hear the impossible creak of the door's hinges as it closed behind us. We've been in here for hours now. None of us can get any cell reception. Archer and Malcolm have been trying to open the door, but it won't budge. It's so dark in here. I can't even see my hand in front of my face, but I can still hear things. Malcolm and Archer keep telling me it's just my imagination, but I know they're hearing it too. There's something going on outside the vault. I heard gunshots and screaming a little while ago, which makes no sense since we're supposed to be the only ones here. Now, I could swear that I'm hearing sounds right outside the door. I can't help but wonder what's going to be waiting for us on the other side if it opens. Archer and Malcolm have stopped trying to open it. I can't see their faces, but I know they're scared. I can hear it now. They're opening the door. Oh, God. Oh, God. The classroom. The school bell rang, signaling the end of another day at Lincoln High. As the students filed out of the classrooms and into the halls, one group of friends lingered behind. They had heard rumors of a haunted classroom at the top floor of the school, and they wanted to see for themselves if it was true. As they climbed the stairs, the group felt a sense of unease wash over them. They had heard stories of strange noises and ghostly apparitions in the classroom, and they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. When they finally reached the door of the classroom, they hesitated, but their curiosity got the better of them, and they slowly pushed the door open. Inside, the room was dark and musty. The desks were covered in cobwebs, and the chalkboards were covered in dust. But as they looked around, they saw something that made their blood run cold. In the corner of the room, they saw a ghostly figure sitting at a desk. It was the ghost of a student who had died in the classroom years before. His eyes were dark and empty, and he stared straight ahead as if in a trance. The friends were frozen with fear, but they knew they had to get out of the classroom before it was too late. They turned to run, but the ghostly figure stood up and began to move towards them. They screamed and ran out of the classroom, down the stairs and out of the school. They never spoke of what they had seen that day, but they knew that the haunted classroom would always be with them, a terrifying reminder of the horrors that lurked within the walls of Lincoln High. The fall. The cold of the floor made my face burn. It seeped into my jaw. It made my teeth ache. It invaded my head and absorbed my thoughts, and I couldn't tell for certain if I was half awake or half asleep or half dead. The only thing I knew was that I had to get up off the goddamn cold ground. My brain wasn't going to allow me to think clearly until then. Oh, quit being such a puss and get the F up. That voice, where did it come from? Was that in my head? Or was someone in the room with me? Panic began to set in as I realized I couldn't remember much of anything. Not my name, or how I got here, or even where here was. I needed to open my eyes. Everything would be okay if I could just open my eyes and get my bearings. Then I would be able to remember where I was, how I got here, what had happened to me, and who this effing asshole was. I just needed to open my eyes. You're so effing pathetic. You always were, and you always will be. Some things just don't change. Slowly and painfully, I felt the lid of my right eye begin to break loose. The blurry world around me refused to come into focus. I could make out a fuzzy silhouette of what appeared to be stairs in the background, leading up to a brightly lit room at the top. As my vision returned to my working eye, I saw a man crouched at the bottom of the stairs. He was draped in darkness, and the light coming from the top of the stairs gave the impression of a halo above his head. Rise and shine, Charles. I recognized this voice now. It was a voice I hadn't heard for many, many years. A voice I had gone to years of therapy to forget. A voice that had taunted me my entire life growing up. It was the voice of my older brother, Frankie. Shit. For a minute there, I thought you wasn't gonna wake up at all. Had me worried. He walked over to me at that point, put his face directly in front of mine, and made an overly exaggerated frown. His hand crossed my field of vision as he picked up one of the teeth from the growing pool of blood in front of me. You know, after what you did to me, Charles, I'm really gonna enjoy watching this. I'm sorry, Francis. I'm so sorry. I attempted to say, but it came out garbled and unintelligible. "You left me, Charles. How you can do that to your own brother, I'll never understand. But you did it. You effing left me to drown in that pond like a rat." I tried to scream again, to no avail. No one was going to come looking for me. I was going to die here. Like a rat. Ghost story. "Do you think ghosts are real?" the man asked. The girl was lying in bed with a sheet pulled up over her head. "I really wish he would be quiet," she thought. She hated scary stories about things that went bump in the night. "I think they are," the man continued. "I think after we die, we can choose to come back." The girl clutched her teddy tight against her chest. "Please be quiet." "But what kind of a person would do that? Come back from the dead, I mean. Do you think they would be good or bad?" She squeezed her eyelids together and tightened her mouth. "Why is it important? Why can't you just leave the question unasked?" "Personally, I'd say they were bad. Think about it. If they were good, there'd be stories like grandmother's spirit saves family from car accident, or man who died in forest helps lost child find their way out." Thunder boomed beyond the window to the right-hand side of the girl's bed, sending a shiver along her spine. "I don't care whether they're good or bad. I just want you to stop talking." Heavy rain began pelting the glass. "But those aren't the kind of stories you hear about, are they? The ones you hear about are always frightening specters who meet bitter ends haunting creepy old buildings or dark tunnels." He was silent for a moment, then added, "That sure doesn't sound like something a good person would do to me." The fine hairs on the back of the girl's neck stood on end. "I don't want to hear any more." "But then you've got to wonder, if they're not good people, then why are they here? What have they come back for?" Floorboards creaked around the room as a man traveled around. Maybe they're sad or filled with regret. The creaking came to a halt alongside the bed. Or perhaps they're angry about how they died and want to make others suffer like they did. The mattress sunk to one side as the man sat down. To keep herself from sliding into the dip, the girl pulled her trembling knees into her chest and scooted back. She didn't dare expose herself to the world outside the blanket. "Please, please, stop talking. Please." Her eyes welled up with tears. "But you still haven't answered my original question." The man leaned forward. Now the girl could sense his head hovering inches above hers. "Do you think ghosts are real?" The girl's body tensed hard. With a frail, trembling voice, she said, "I don't know." 4 pale fingers reached beneath the top of the sheet. "Would you like to find out?" Soul's Oasis. "So this is Tristan's work?" "Yes." I wandered around the deck. Well, at least his skill wasn't exaggerated. Nothing about him is exaggerated. I sighed and turned to him. "Grandpa, he's a con man. I warned you about him and his lies, but you refused to listen." "They're not lies, Starfish." "How do you know? All you have is his word." "That's more than enough. He said none of his previous clients have complained." "Have you talked to them?" "No. He doesn't give out that information." I wonder why, I said, rolling my eyes. Don't be so cynical, Starfish. He's protecting their privacy, and I'm glad, because he'll protect mine too. I don't want... He paused and looked down, fidgeting with the loose bandage around his hand. I don't want anyone to know how much I paid for this boat. I've only told you because we share our love for the open sea. My disapproval mellowed, and I walked over to him. Grandpa, you trusting me means a lot to me. You mean a lot to me. I took his injured hand and adjusted the bandage, cinching it snugly. That's why I don't want to see you get hurt. Don't worry, I won't. Tonight, I'm taking Soul's Oasis on her maiden voyage, and I'm going to get more than my money's worth. I met his eyes. Soul's Oasis? That's quite a name. And she'll live up to it. Tristan assured me she will. He walked to the railing and gripped it tight. I can feel it. I stifled a sigh. All right. So when do we depart? Oh no, Starfish. This is a trip I'm taking on my own. What? I said, incredulous. Since when? His apologetic smile creased his weathered face. You know I've enjoyed every one of our trips together, but this one's different. Tristan said I had to take it on my own. I crossed my arms. Oh, really? Well, isn't that a clever way of making sure that there are no other witnesses to his boat's otherworldly spectacles? It's not that. He just doesn't want to be held accountable. I had to sign a waiver. He made you sign a waiver? Grandpa! Starfish, please. Don't worry. He placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. I know what I'm doing. And I'm not letting you go alone. It's your boat now. You're free to let anyone you want board it. It doesn't work that way. The waiver. Forget the damn waiver. I can't. I signed it. Where is it? With him. How do I find him? He only talks to clients. That's bullshit. Give me his number. I'm going to... Ramona, enough. The gravity in his gaze silenced my turmoil. Trust me. Let me do this on my own. But Grandpa... Trust me. I do, but I love you and I love you too, and I'm grateful I can share so much with you. He gave me a wistful smile. But this is something I've dreamt of for so long, and I don't want to ruin what could be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Please, Starfish, let me do this. Let me fulfill my dream. I nodded, but my turbulent thoughts remained stubborn. I trusted my grandfather, but I didn't trust Tristan. Not only did he prey upon the hopeful by offering them empty promises, he forced them to sign waivers, releasing him from all liability. He was nothing more than a heartless charlatan, and I wasn't going to let him hurt my grandfather any more than he already had. My grandfather waved goodbye as I drove away, but I didn't go far. After waiting for him to disappear below deck, I parked a distance away and snuck into Soul's Oasis. I didn't know what kind of tricks Tristan had set up to fool his clients, but I was ready to dismantle every last one. My grandfather wasn't going to fall victim to any ridiculous projections, speakers, or animatronics. The layout of Soul's Oasis was different from Dancing Dawn's, the old boat where my grandfather taught me everything there was to know about boating. With the added struggle of remaining out of view, I found myself stumbling around, even more so once the sun had set. Despite the setbacks, I was determined. Yet despite my determination, I didn't come across anything suspicious. A rumble startled me, and I jumped, stifling a cry as I bashed my head against the bottom of the staircase. My pulse racing, I ran to the window, and my heart dropped along with my jaw as I saw the trail of froth leading away from the docks. I hadn't expected my grandfather to take off so soon. I whipped around, my wide eyes searching the darkness for answers. I could come clean, explain why I stowed away. My grandfather had forgiven me for a lot over the years. I could see him understanding my concern and excusing my disobedience. I bit my lip in uncertainty. Then again, I've never done anything behind his back this audaciously. I broke his trust, and that would break his heart. No, I'd rather remain hidden until we returned the next morning. It was going to be uncomfortable, but not as uncomfortable as appearing to have no confidence in my own grandfather. And this didn't have to be a bad thing. I could now keep an eye on him all night and continue to search the boat for anything suspicious. I just had to make sure I laid low. The bump on my head throbbed to the rhythm of my agitated pulse, and I winced as I rubbed it. To my shock, my hand came back warm, wet, and sticky. Thinking fast, I removed my sweater and wrapped it around the wound like a bandana. The last thing I needed right now was a hemorrhaging head injury. Ramona. I gasped and ducked down, my heart stuttering in my throat. How did my grandfather know I was here? I barely made a sound. Ramona, you're here? Confusion swirled within my fear. My grandfather only called me Ramona when he was upset with me. But this whispered voice didn't sound upset. It sounded overjoyed. I knew you loved me. I knew it. You tried to deny it for so long, but you couldn't deny your heart. I'm here for you, my butterfly. Ice flooded my veins. My butterfly. Only my stalker called me my butterfly. You look as beautiful as always. I've missed you. Those last 3 words resonated in my ear, and I squeaked in terror and jerked away, my wild eyes scanning the room as I plastered myself to the wall. No, you're not here. I am here, for you, my butterfly. I squeezed my eyes shut, my voice cracking through my hyperventilating breath. No, this isn't happening. This can't be real. My love for you has always been real, and now you show up, proving you've always loved me back in your own way, leaving your curtains open just a tantalizing sliver, getting Fang so you could walk her twice a day past my car, keeping the kitchen window open while you cooked so I could hear you sing along to the radio. His words carved through my prickling skin, releasing traumatic memories I'd spent years struggling to tame. Tears welled in my eyes and I hugged myself, shivering as I tried to fight past the madness I'd found myself in. This couldn't be Tristan's trickery. He didn't know me. He didn't know about my stalker. He didn't even know I was going to be a stowaway. Yet if this wasn't fake, then that only left one other possibility. Tristan wasn't a charlatan. He offered the real deal. I don't know how this is happening, but I never loved you, I said, fighting to control the fear in my voice. You harassed me, stalked me, terrified me. You tried to kidnap me. I never meant to scare you. I love you. I can't imagine myself without you. After my arrest, the idea of never seeing you again was too much to bear. But today, you showed up. You showed up. You were a beacon in the dark, and I came running, my butterfly. Now we can be together forever." What do you mean?" I asked, hugging myself tighter. "You came to be with me, and I'm here for you. Together, we'll finally be free to love. You have no idea how much I've suffered without you, yearning for just a glimpse of your smile, a whiff of your perfume, Panicked to the point of nausea, I burst out of the room and ran up the stairs, my shrill words quaking as I yelled, "Grandpa!" I jumped up on the deck, panting as I looked around in a frenzy. There, facing the bow, was my grandfather, his back to me as he looked out towards the starry horizon. "Grandpa!" I cried out as I ran over. He didn't turn around, so I slid in front of him, and my heart sank at his trance-like state. "Grandpa, can you hear me?" I asked, shaking him. A flash of clarity streaked across his face, and he frowned as his eyes focused on me. "Starfish?" "Yes, we have to get off this boat." He blinked, his confusion growing. "What are you doing here?" "I'm sorry. I only wanted to protect you. I am so sure Tristan had set up gimmicks to trick you. I didn't think it could be real." His eyes twinkled and he smiled. "You can hear her too?" "Her?" "Vivian." "Who?" "My true love." I frowned. "I thought Grandma was your true love." "Your grandma is wonderful, but Vivian, she's my first love, my only true love." He turned back towards the water, his eyes glazing above a lopsided smile. "She's here. She came when she saw me. Do you hear her?" "No, but I did hear my stalker. Do you remember him? The one who took his life after he was arrested for attempting to kidnap me?" "Oh, I could float for days in your poetry." "Grandpa!" I shook him again. "Please listen to me." He turned back to me with a disoriented pout. "What's wrong?" "My dead stalker. He said he came when he saw me and wants us to be together forever." Together forever. A dreamy look swept across his face as he glanced up. "Yes, mon petit jou. We'll be together forever, where no sickness can tear us apart." "Grandpa!" I grabbed his head and forced him to look at me, and his irritation surfaced above his stupor. "Ramona, what are you doing?" "We're in danger. We have to get off this cursed boat." "We're not in danger." "When a dead person says they want to be together forever, what do you think that means?" His cheeks pushed against my hands as he smiled. "It means I can be with my Vivian." "It means you'll die." "That's okay." "It's not okay. Grandpa, you have family here." "They don't need me. I just want to be with Vivian." "We do need you. And if we stay, I'll die too. I don't want to die." My words broke through his haze and he frowned. "Why will you die?" "Because my dead stalker wants me to join him." "Your stalker? Why is he here?" "I don't know. He said he saw me and came running." "How? Tristan said he built this boat only for me." His gaze started to the sweater wrapped around my head. "You hurt yourself?" "Yes, and I'm bleeding a lot. Yet another reason we should get back to land." He clenched his fist around a bandage on his hand, his expression heavy beneath his emotions. "You shouldn't have come. Tristan didn't take you into account. He says the strings of unrequited love don't always run both ways. That's why he offers regulated portals and privacy. I frowned. What do you mean? Wasn't this whole thing just to prove ghosts existed? No, starfish. He looked up at the sky with a smile. It was to reunite with my true love, taken too soon. I stared at him in disbelief. So you were planning on what? Dying tonight? All alone out here? He chuckled at a joke I couldn't hear. Grandpa, no. Snap out of it. I held his face tighter. Listen to me. I'm glad I came, because I don't want you to die. This isn't the answer. Your time will come, and Vivian will be waiting for you. His smile wavered as he whispered, But I don't want to wait. Where are you, my butterfly? Oh, shit. I let go of my grandfather and turned around the deck, my pulse spiking. Stay away from me, you criminal. You're the criminal, Ramona, stealing my heart and holding it captive all these years. But now, you show up to give me yours in return, confirming our destiny. I gasped as a cold shock rippled beneath my skin, its tendrils grazing my rabid heart. Grandpa, something's happening. We have to get off this boat. Another icy jolt filled my lungs, freezing my breath midstream as I fell to my knees. Shaking, I turned to my grandfather. He hadn't reacted at all, his infatuation beyond help as he stood still, his yearning eyes reflecting the night's grim promises. With his smile indented deep, he held his arms out to the sky, and dread spurred my determination. I didn't know how it was going to happen, but I wasn't going to let us die. Fighting the Arctic surges coursing through my body, I gritted my teeth and staggered toward the controls. If I could just steer this boat back to land and drag my grandfather out, perhaps all this would stop. Wheezing, I gripped the wheel and threw my weight against it, my hope rising as Soul's Oasis groaned and turned around. Yet hope didn't last long, as a frigid shroud suffocated me, sticking to every inch of my trembling skin. It won't be long, my butterfly. Gasping for air, I writhed and thrashed, pleas of desperation squeaking through my clenched jaw. Spasming as I fought for life, I crashed against the controls, and my rioting heart leapt to my throat as I found myself airborne. The ocean's salty warmth thawed my torment, and I coughed and sputtered as I broke through the surface. Soul's Oasis was upside down, rumbling between foamy bubbles. Treading water, I whipped around wide-eyed, panting as I tried to find my grandfather in the inky depths surrounding me. Grandpa! I screamed between frantic dives. Grandpa! I searched long after the boat sank, yet when dawn danced across the waves and I was rescued, weeping in resignation, all I could hope for was that Soul's Oasis lived up to her name. A story I remember from my childhood. I remember hearing this story like it was earlier today, but in fact, it was years ago when I was a preteen kid. An older kid, call him Calvin, who rode the bus to school with us, had drowned while fishing near a dam as the undercurrent drug him under the water. His body was found later. Anyway, the story was that shortly before he drowned, his mother experienced something a few nights prior. She said she had seen an image of a being at the foot of his bed one night as he slept. As she went to speak, the image turned towards her and shh at her. She later told her husband, who dismissed it as nothing more than seeing things. After Calvin died, she again told her husband the story. At that moment, she realized who the image was. It was her brother, Calvin's uncle, who had drowned a few years prior. He often took Calvin fishing when he was a young kid. I'll add another, more recent. My brother and his wife live near a cemetery and have shown me video from their phones of where these small floating lights will flow through their house while they sit and watch TV in the evenings. They believe it to be children from the cemetery who come to play with their granddaughter whenever she visits. The way that they usually notice the floating lights will be their dogs staring off at a random corner or direction in the house, either growling or barking. It's happened about a dozen times or so, and they've caught it on their phones a few times. This is 100% true. About 12 years ago, I was doing a job as a self-employed plasterer in Ashington, Northumberland, England. I was working in my hometown. Anyway, the house was a decent size, and I was there for a while. They bought the two houses next door to each other, and making it into one big house. Living in the house was the dad, mom, and a daughter. One day I was working on the staircase in this house. The mom had said to me she was going out, but if Emma, her daughter, came back home, can I tell her that her mom was away to shop, then going for gas, and won't be long? No problem. So I am working on the stairs, and I go down to the bottom of the stairs to go into the kitchen to get new water in my bucket. So was downstairs 2 minutes most. Went back upstairs and heard someone crying. I could tell it was a girl. Now, with the house originally being two houses getting made into one, there were 4 doors into the house, 2 front doors and 2 back doors. Also, 2 staircases linking into one big staircase. So I thought Emma had come home through a door at the back, up the other staircase, into her room when I was downstairs. Then I heard more crying, and I heard, plain as day, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry." Then I heard a muffle. Then all was quiet. Anyway, the mom came back and asked if Emma was home. I was saying she was, and sounded upset. Her mobile rang, and it was Emma, phoning her mom to see if she could pick her up from her friends. She wasn't in the house at all. Mom asked, which room? I heard the crying and the voice and the muffle, and when I told her, her face went white. Turns out the lady from the house had hung herself in that room only 2 years prior. She left behind a young daughter. I would like to give a heartfelt thank you to the special friends of the channel. Your generosity means the world to me. If you would like to support the channel, the link is below in the description. Also, please send me your stories to duchessofdarkness27@gmail.com. You can also find me on Instagram at duchess.ofdarkness or Twitter at duchessofdarkn2. I want to thank you all for your support, your kindness, and your encouragement. I appreciate it so very much. Until next time.